And if you try to put that up on YouTube or something, then you must be a terrorist, and we have to take that down right away. No, unfortunately, that's the way this plays out. But as I'm saying, the exact same thing is happening in Syria right now, and we have to be aware of this because you have these London-based Syrian human rights watchdogs who are now saying that, for example, the ceasefire that was supposedly reached in recent days, Damascus and the protesters who are really an armed insurgency, was broken by Assad's forces who were firing on people. But this, of course, is, again, another unattributed report. We don't have any confirmation of this. It's all coming from this London-based watchdog, which back in August actually had an incubator baby story about Syria. There was this report that went around. Even CNN picked up on it and was reporting on it. That they cut off the power in Hama, and thus these incubator babies are going to die.
It's for the children.
The worst part is they had the picture of these babies, and it turned out the picture was actually taken in Egypt. It had nothing to do with Syria whatsoever, but just anything to try to hammer home to the people that this is the bad man, we have to go after him.
Well, that's my point is, I mean, a lot of these countries are run by corrupt governments, but the people running our system are like scientific manipulating criminals who are putting cancer viruses in the vaccine and saying, don't worry about radiation, we'll just raise the level and say it's safe. I mean, when it comes to this panopticon of criminals, the biggest ones are running our societies.
That's exactly right. And that's the point, isn't it? Because it's not like I'm for Assad or for his government or I'm defending Syria in that regard. It's just that I don't want to watch another thing happen like what happened in Libya, where these allegations somehow become facts that we have to act on.
Well, what about these protesters in Syria, openly Western funded, saying, please bomb us, level everything? I mean, this is crazy.
It's ridiculous, and unfortunately, unless we can get the word out about what's really what might be really happening, or just put the call out to start questioning some of these reports, unless we can get that message out there in a big way, it's going to unfold exactly like it did in Libya, because this is part of a template, it's part of a strategy. Demonize anyone who strikes out at these armed protesters or whatever's happening, this destabilization, that, as you say, it's now been proven from the leaked documents that the U.S. State Department has been funding the Syrian opposition for years.
They fund a bunch of rebels to blow stuff up. The government fights it, whether that's wrong or right. Then they call them innocent protesters, and then NATO blows the hell out of the country. And I mean, and they call it peace. I mean, it's incredible.
And then they raid the $200 billion coffers that Gaddafi had, and no one's questioning where that money's going, are they?
Amazing. What's your view, James Corbett, of what's happening in Europe, Greece, this open announcement by the Vatican for world government?
Well, that's unfortunately not too surprising to anyone who's been watching the Vatican in recent years and the calls for a new world order and everything that we've seen coming out of there. But certainly, I think the whole European situation just speaks once again to the fact that governments are just there to preserve themselves and don't care at all about the populations they're allegedly ruling over. And we see that with the Greek thing. This week it came out, it was a big deal. Oh my God, it's explosive information. Greece is actually going to give their population a chance to vote on this European bailout proposal that's going to put them and their children into servitude. They're actually going to get a vote on it. Imagine that. What a revolutionary idea. And the latest that I've heard, it's coming out today that, no, actually they're not going to give them a vote. They managed to strike a deal to transfer power over to the next group of thugs that are going to move the political football further down the field, so they don't have to give the people a vote at all. So that's good. That crisis is averted, because the crisis is not the idea that people are going to accept this. The crisis is the idea that people are going to say no, exactly like they did in Iceland, and they just can't have that. They can't give people a say in what's happening over their own lives.
Look, I could ask a lot of questions here, James, but on your radar screen, I asked this at the first, you brought up the radiation in Japan. What else are you really concerned about right now? I mean, we see this incredible global push to censor the internet, Homeland Security admitting they're ordering YouTube to censor videos critical of government. What's your view on all that?
Absolutely ridiculous and really disconcerting, but again, not really surprising for anyone who's been covering it for a while. But one of the subjects that I've been covering lately, and I think is really interesting and hasn't been getting a lot of attention, is the drug running aspects of the Fast and Furious debacle, which turns out to, as we now start to realize, it's a much bigger program. It was there in the Bush administration. It's been going on for a long time. So we know this is a big operation that's been unfolding for a while, and now that it's coming out in court documents, states that, oh yeah, they have to invoke this Classified Information Protection Act or whatever it's called in this the trial of this Sinaloa drug cartel gangster, because he's claiming, hey, I was just working for the U.S. government. I'm just part of the gang, you know. And now that that's coming out, they have to invoke this act, so he can't speak in court anymore. So it turns out again that they're working with the drug lords in this crony monopolist manner to try to control the drug trade and try to monopolize it, and that's all part of this gun running program. It's just so mind-boggling, corruption off the scale that I think in any other time, I mean, we could be talking about this for months and months and months, but now there's just so much going on and so much on our plates that it's difficult to keep all of these balls in the air at any one time, as you know.
We've got Fritz Springmeier coming up, but I want to take some calls with you. I want to give the number out right now. We'll take 5 or 6 calls for our next guest. The toll-free number to join us, we are live at 12:34 Central Standard Time. That's 1:34 Eastern, or I guess you could say 11:34 Mountain, or 10:34 Pacific.
Or 2:34 Japanese Standard Time. 2:34 in the afternoon.
All right, we got Don in Michigan still holding from earlier. The toll-free number to join us is 877-789-ALEX, 877-789-2539. Open phones, 877-789-ALEX. Don in Michigan, you're on the air with the Corbett Report. Go ahead. Hello, Don. We are speaking to you from Austin, Texas. He fell asleep. He's been holding a while. All right, we just opened I didn't even know the phones were open yet. They told me a caller was still holding. So obviously he's probably already gone to sleep for the evening. So the phones are open, 877-789-ALEX. James Corbett, going back to all this, how much corruption can the system handle coming out? How much can they handle when it's just how incredibly criminal they are becomes more and more evident?
They can handle exactly as much as we can handle, and I think that's the point of it. Once again, this devolves to the people who have the real power and control over all of these systems. We always tend to look at the government and what the government officials are doing as if they're the real heart of this, but no, we are the heart. We are the base on which they build the foundations for all of their strictures and structures of control and all of their control over society. So when we start to say no, they crumble, and I think that's the point of it. And we are getting to that point. As you know, we are reaching that critical mass, to use an unfortunate analogy, that we are really starting to take over this process. But it's always a question, are we doing enough, and have they set up their structures to capture us once we get out of the paradigm well enough? So it's really a race against time. But ultimately, I think we are winning that race. And you, as you say, I mean, their corruption is going to start eating itself, as it always does and always has throughout history, that it gets to the point where the corruption is so rampant and is in so many corners and has been fostered for so long by so many different agencies and departments and multinational corporations that have all of these levers of power, that when these people, these parasites, get into all of these positions of power, they start feeding on each other because there's nothing left. So I think that is, in one way, is something to look forward to. In another way, we're all going to suffer when this economy starts to go down. But that's the only way, I think, to get through this and to really start to construct the type of system that we do want, instead of living under the reins of the rulers of the moment.
All right, folks, we are queuing up your calls right now. I just opened the phone system here a few minutes ago. We'll go to some calls for James Corbett here in a moment. We are doing a 27-hour marathon transmission. We are doing a money bomb. If you're watching, whether it's $1 or $1,000, your donations are welcome. We'll help fund hiring more people for the news staff and buying more equipment we need here. Look what we've built here with your support in the last few years. We've also got huge discounts on videos and books and things at Infowars.com. We have bumper stickers at cost in this new offensive we've launched. All available at Infowars.com. You can find the donate buttons, or InfowarsMoneyBomb.com. We also have a few crew members here back there to take your calls for phone call donations at 888-253-3139, 888-253-3139. Here it is 12:38 and 27 seconds. We're talking to James Corbett of CorbettReport.com. James, looking at, I already mentioned the Orwellian stuff, but I mean, my gosh, it's becoming so crazy with street lights listening to you and watching you, and government with warrantless checkpoints and TSA everywhere. I mean, at a certain point, this is really becoming la-la land.
I mean, you couldn't make this up if you were trying, and trust me, people in the past have tried their best to make up the most outrageous stuff, and it's still nowhere close to what we're living through right now. USA Today coming out today, hotel guests recruited with Homeland Security TV spots, these PSAs inviting everyone to pretend they're James Bond and looking for the Al-Qaeda boogeyman under every bed and in every corner of the room, just getting more and more ridiculous and out in your face in the open, and as we've talked about before, I mean, this is part of the psychological operation to get people to commit to one side or the other. And they know there's going to be a lot of people that get woken up by this kind of in-your-face Orwellian tyranny. But there's going to be a lot of people who are going to buy into it because they are so invested in the system and in all of the things that are going on in their life. They just don't want to face it. And they will buy into all of this. And that is part of the strategy. And unfortunately, they've set up the whole Orwellian system to try to control those people and to oppress those people and to imprison those people who rise up against them. So it's a very difficult situation to combat unless we start to unlock more minds, which is the whole point of InfoWars, is what it's all about, and I think what it has to be about at this point.
Well, that's right, James. Those that have already bought into corruption will just give into anything. Once you've said, I'm going to acquiesce to this, the sky's the limit. I want to go to phone calls here. Melvin in New York, then Harminder, Alex, Will, Joe, and Doug, and others. Melvin, you're on the air. Thanks for holding.
Alex, how you doing, man? I'm enjoying the show. I sent you 3 Federal Reserve notes that are probably worth a couple pennies. You could trade in.
Thank you.
Thank you. And James, you're the man. I like your channel, and you have a great voice.
Thank you. That's awesome to hear.
Yeah, man. I wanted to let you know, at my school out here in New York, I took an urban study course about the history of New York, and the teacher was really slanted towards the left, and all the kids were group thinking with the whole brainwash of the liberalism. But the whole class was about capitalism and how capitalism started with slavery, and that the beginning of the country and the whole system that we live under. And I understand with the whole 1913, the Federal Reserve, but they were teaching literally that capitalism comes from slavery, and that Peter Stuyvesant and all these collectivists had to come through, and these statists had to come, fix everything, put in curfews, social engineering, and they needed the hand of tyranny to control the wild, ravenous people of New York, the uncontrollable. It was along that angle, and I mentioned the Illuminati, I mentioned all kinds of stuff in the class, and the teacher didn't refute anything I said, but the kids looked at me like I was an alien.
Well, look, all you got to know is the big bankers always fund communism. Capitalism, we're not under a capitalist system. Slavery is as old as humanity. Every group's engaged in that under tyranny. And they always push collectivism because they want to get people dependent so you're not independent. But, James, your view on that?
Well, I think you're right. Here's what I have to say about slavery. Slavery is all about how you define it. So, yes, absolutely, there was slavery going on in America hundreds of years ago, but there's still slavery going on today. It's just a different type. And
it's debt slavery, or they catch you using their drugs they brought in, and so now legally they make you a slave in a prison for 20 cents an hour.
That's it. I mean, they just don't call it slavery, so we don't have to talk about it, I guess. Or if they put in their collectivist system that they want to put in and make everyone share their wealth at the point of a gun, then that's not slavery. That's happiness or whatever they want to call it.
By the way, they make all discrimination about race or something instead of globalist banks getting bailout money and being exempt from their own laws. Melvin, final comment.
Yeah, man, my sister works for the TSA. I try to tell her about the body scanners. She tells me it's lies. I tell her, it's in the instruction manual. You can see the private parts to lock it in, to lock the view in. She's like, how'd you find that out? How do they tell you? Then she gives me the excuse, well, look, even sometimes the government messes up, and look how they put the underwear bomber or the shoe bomber, whichever one of those it was, on the plane. By mistake, our CIA did it, so even we mess up.
Yeah, they spin it. The government put him on the plane by accident. Oh, yeah.
You have to submit. And then she gives me the other excuses. Oh, if you can't deal with this, then you can't be a passenger in Israel, because over there, they're real security.
Well, you notice America's got to be like Israel. We always hear that. We've got to have checkpoints everywhere because we're... No, incredible, Melvin. Good to hear from you. Your sister will wake up later.